Hi, oh my god, I didn't see you there. Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. Thank you so much for tuning in for the final installment of my Racism and Allyship series. I know that there have been several moments throughout this series where these things that I've discussed may have made you feel hopeless, so that's why I'm trying to end on a hopeful note. So today we're going to be talking about things that you can do in your everyday life to be an anti-racist and to take anti-racist action. So let's jump in. As I go through this list of action items, I'm going to do my best to try to connect them to issues and examples that we've discussed over the course of the series, and then I'm also going to be grouping them by what they accomplish, when to use them, and the type of allyship that you may want to participate in. So all of these ideas came from my good friend Melissa Loupeda. I just wanted to give her a quick shout out because she's one of the brightest people that I know, and she spent a lot of time and emotional labor putting together the document that I got this information from. That document will be linked in the link tree that I'm putting in my description box, so make sure to check that out. With the Black Lives Matter movement, the momentum and involvement of allies ebbs and flows. Between the deaths of the people that we protest and fight for, sometimes the demonstration stops or allies want to unplug for a minute. So what do you do then? Reflect. Rest is just as important as unrest, and reflection is not only necessary but critical to being a good ally. This exercise is one that I've done at vigils and discussions about the Black Lives Matter movement, and this reflective exercise is perfect for reminding folks the things that they can change or what they can do when they aren't quite sure how to contribute as an ally. Linked in Melissa's document are 2 videos, each 8 minutes and 46 seconds long, to reflect the amount of time that George Floyd was being choked. This designated time can be used to reflect on yourself and your behaviors and your thoughts, and think about some of the things that you do or think that might reflect your internal implicit racist biases, and the actions or thoughts that you can take to counterbalance those implicit biases and correct them. If you reflect and notice that you've been clutching your purse or crossing the street when you see a Black person, like some of the examples that I listed in my earlier videos, then maybe one thing that you could do would be to, during this reflection time, identify a mantra that you can say to yourself when these thoughts come up or when you feel tempted to take these actions, such as, I'm okay and they're a nice person, and just repeating that to yourself. Or you can even make a more pointed effort to look them in the eye and smile at them like you would any other person that you're not afraid of. During this time, you could also read a list of names from one of the Say Their Name images that you can find on Google, and you can use that time to reflect on actionable items moving forward or reinvigorate your feelings about these issues if you're an ally that's feeling burnt out. A good exercise for checking your privilege would be to follow along with me as I read the following statements, and I would highly suggest that even right now you pause the video and think about whether or not you agree or disagree with each of these statements and why. So the first is, I wouldn't mind being treated like Black people are in the United States right now. The second is, I wouldn't mind being treated how Black people have been treated in the United States historically. The third is, I wouldn't mind being treated like Asian people are in the US right now, especially in light of the pandemic. The next is, I wouldn't mind being treated how Asian people have been treated in the United States historically. And then finally, you can do the same with these statements and replace them with Indigenous individuals and think about whether or not you agree or disagree with them and why. A big takeaway for this exercise that I want you to keep in mind is that even if you answered agree to any of those statements, and I would assume that that would most likely be for the right now statements, a big point of the racism model that I've proposed and discussed in this series is that the levels of racism, specifically systemic racism, carry the history of racism into the present. So the present is painted with the same historical horrors that you may like to avoid if you answered agree to just right now. So that's definitely some food for thought to keep in mind when you reflect on the experiences of different racial and ethnic groups in the United States today. This exercise is best to do with other people, but obviously it's okay if you're doing it by yourself. And particularly, I think that this exercise would be great for teachers to do with students. That way you can think about ways to adjust your future lesson plans or your curriculum to be more race inclusive. So take the following categories and start by naming only white people in these categories: great leader, astronaut, athlete, musician, and scientist. After that, go ahead and go through those categories again, but this time try to name Black people. Then do the exercise where you're only naming Indigenous people in those categories. And then next you can move on by trying to apply this to other racial or ethnic groups. So you could do Asian people more broadly, or you could even break that up into South Asian, East Asian, or Southeast Asian. If you struggled with this exercise, have a conversation about these gaps in knowledge and ways that you can fill these gaps moving forward. If you're with friends, maybe you could start a book club together, or even do like the 5-minute fun TikTok presentations about some of these figures that you didn't know about before. Or if you're a teacher, you can consider adjusting your history or English lessons to integrate these people, or even modeling math or science exercises after some of the discoveries made by non-white figures in history. So I'm sorry about the leaf blowing that's currently going on in the background, if you can hear that. But also, shameless plug here, having these conversations with loved ones that may not agree with you or don't see your position can be difficult. So while I would encourage you to do any of the exercises that I've talked about so far with your loved ones, it's also okay to point them to educational resources that they can read, watch, and then you guys can discuss that together. First, you can point them to this series. So the whole point of this series is and was to introduce people to issues surrounding race and then foster critical discussions from that. But there are also several books that I'll be putting in the link tree in my description box, as well as movies and podcasts that you can point people to that you can all discuss with each other later. A big point that I would encourage in your discussion with somebody that might not see racial inequities the same way you do is to ask questions. When they say something offensive or that you disagree with, if your knee-jerk reaction is to argue back, consider pulling back and asking them clarifying questions or questions that make them elaborate on their beliefs more. The everyday person that isn't racially conscious may not be super hateful or mean. They may genuinely believe in some of the things attached to their harmful beliefs, and once you actually make them start saying those harmful things out loud and elaborating on them further, they might be more open to reconsidering those things. Something becoming increasingly popular at the moment amongst newly minted graduates entering the workforce or financially stable individuals is committing to donating a portion of your income, whether that's 5, 10, 15%, to organizations and nonprofits whose mission you really believe in. I would encourage you, whether you're doing this already or you'd like to get started, to consider donating to Black organizations, ones that focus on helping Black youth, Black trans individuals, Black incarcerated folks, or even things like donating to Indigenous land trusts in your area. I'll be linking some links to those in my link tree, so make sure to check that out in my description box so that you can consider donating. This one's pretty simple, but visit and buy from Black-owned businesses. This is obviously going to be easier in cities or metropolitan areas where Black-owned businesses may be more common, but I would encourage you to really explore when you're traveling these Black-owned businesses, because you'll find anything from food joints to tea bars to bakeries to nail and hair salons. It's all there. The same goes for Indigenous businesses. Many Indigenous folks sell their art and beadwork, among other things, but next time you're considering buying yourself a bag or jewelry or buying that for your loved ones, patronize an Indigenous business. And I also want to make sure that I say explicitly, though, when you do purchase from Indigenous folks, don't try to negotiate the price. Pay them for their time and their hard work. Sign petitions and vote, and pay particular attention to who's running for the district attorney, police officer policies and mandates such as wearing body cams, whether or not they have access to mental health resources, the length of their trainings, things like that. And then also pay attention to your school board and or PTA. Make sure to try to attend those meetings. That way you can see what schools in your areas are doing about equity, both in hiring and their curriculum. Local elections are so important and so often neglected. And I'm not saying you have to believe in the US voting or electoral system, but if you do, or even if you don't, I encourage you to pay particular attention to those positions and local voting, like I mentioned before. And so I'm gonna have some ongoing petitions related to police brutality and murders in the link tree and the description box, but I can't stress enough, if you can't be out in the streets, sign petitions and vote locally. So that's the extent of my list for now. I numbered these exercises and actions and broke them up into different categories because I want them to be accessible to any type of ally, bringing any sort of passion or interest to these issues. I want to encourage some sort of structured or scheduled commitment to these action items. I want and hope that you'll return to this video several times over your course of your journey of trying to take anti-racist actions in your day-to-day life. And I hope that you'll share this with your relatives, young and old, so that y'all can do this together. I would suggest that you make a day for yourself, whether that's Saturdays or Sundays, where you decide to do at least one of these actions or exercises. Obviously, I know that not all of them are repeatable, such as donating a portion of your income to certain organizations, although I would suggest that you reevaluate that maybe like once a year, switch it up a little bit. But several of these actions are repeatable. So I just say that once a week, Saturday or Sunday, you dedicate anywhere from 10 minutes to an hour to do these exercises or actions, just once a week. So that's all I've got for you today and for the foreseeable future. I haven't officially decided if I'm going to do any spin-off videos or series, so it's goodbye for now. And next, I just want to say a few thank yous. I'm going to read them from my little thank you speech, but I want to say thank you again to Melissa Loupeda for providing the ideas for all of these exercises and action items listed in this video. Without her work, this video wouldn't have been possible or nearly as comprehensive as it is. And I also want to give a huge shout out to all of my friends who have sat by, listened, and conversed with me about these topics, which I care about so deeply. They've been incredibly supportive and critical to every bit of work that I do. And then finally to my family who have supported me on this endeavor to start a project on something that I really care about. I didn't know who would be around to listen and watch, and I didn't know how many views I'd get, but they believed in me the whole time. So thank you all for watching, and don't forget to like, comment, and share this video and these series with everyone around you. Bye.